Welcome into the Fantasy Football Forge. My name is Steve. Down at the bottom of your screen, I know I'm looking tiny down here. So, a couple of things before we get into this video, but this is a user requested a request from someone in the comments on a different video. And I felt like there was enough here to show, but if you want to see the original, there is an original video to this topic, which covers some of the stuff in more detail, so I'm going to go into less explanation in this video. Check that video out. I will put that video at the end of this if I remember to, so you can find it there, but otherwise it will have a similar looking thumbnail and type of title, so you can check it out on the page. Other than that, keep an eye out for on Thursdays, actually, announcement on Thursday evenings, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We've been doing some live mock drafting on the Sleeper app. You can download it for free. You don't need a credit card or anything like that. It's not a gambling app, at least as far as I know. You don't need that kind of information. So you can join on in. I just send out a link in chat. Everybody comes in. We haven't filled it out yet, so you almost certainly there will be room for you to practice with us. But it's been good practice, and I'd like to get a full room. That'd really be nice. 10, 12 people, and then maybe we can get a league to set up together too, to have a fun little listeners league. Other than that, if you want to become a member, you can check out more on that. It's 99 cents, and the things that you can get, I do highlight a little bit in some recent videos. My player highlight videos, James Cook and David Njoku, both of those have a little bit more of a descriptor of what you can expect when becoming a member of the channel. Also, a little note that I forgot in terms of later on in August, Labor Day weekend is the popular weekend for people to do their drafts, so that's going to be the very tail end of this month. So I think starting like Saturday the 24th or so, around then, I'm going to turn my focus to doing live mock drafts here on the channel, maybe as much as once every night or something like that. So, or I'll get together sometimes during the day, sometimes at night, whatever the case, like once a day, get on here, do some live mock drafting to practice up for anybody from, the entirety of that weekend that will be having their own mock drafts. Okay, I got sidetracked, so hopefully I finished up my announcement section. Like I said, this was a request for a full PPR positional heat map video. And some things remain, overall, actually, a lot of things remain similar, but there were some slight differences that I was able to pull out and point out here that I wanted to go over. So I did the same thing I did with the heat map, except I looked at the ADPs using, full PPR information. And here's the difference boards. This is going to be available all up on the website. There's a link up onto the website from down in the description. Also, if you're not familiar, I have all of my positional rankings are up on the website, www.theffforge.com. Link down in the description, of course, and you can find them up on the website. You can also find some videos that I've done on them, but they've changed since those videos. And maybe I'll get some updated videos out there as well as we get closer to the draft. But for now, we're looking at this. So this is the what we're going to be using to look more at some of the individual, like when you're drafting from picks 1 through 4, 5 through 8, 9 through 12 information. So let's actually move on to this data set, which is a little bit more of an overall view of the draft. And if you recall, this one on the left is based on specifically slotting in each player. So there's 12 players in each round. Each of these columns, each of these rows counts as a round, and each of these columns, of course, tallies up the amount of individual players for that position. So there's 204 players. This is 17 rounds. This is looking at total. 12 times 17 comes to 204. Whereas over here, I'm looking at the ADP. So the amount of players that fit into the average draft position of 1 through 12 is only 11. And what that means is that there's some uncertainty at somewhere within this grouping. Here you can see it's only 8 players. there's only so many guys that people are confident in that they're drafting them so highly that their ADPs are within the top 12, top 24. And so there's some uncertainty occurring that seems to flatten out here in these rounds. Editor Steve here, later on, I did not set this next portion up very well. So I just want to let you know, I'm about to start talking about when I started to look at the actual ADP information, the individual players as I started recording their average draft positions, and adjusting that information from the previous videos, like half PPR data, into the PPR data. I was able to see the players start to be scrambled based on their ADP just a little bit differently. And that's what this next section is about. So I hope that helps to clarify, make sense of this next portion just a little bit more. Back to the video. The first 2 rounds remained the same as the previous data, or at least incredibly similar. In the third round, at the end of the second round, there's one little switch up. But in the third round, things started to get scrambled. Players were starting to get moved around plus or minus 1 or 2 spots, like multiple players. Going into the fourth round, all of a sudden you start to see players moving up, a third of a round, plus or minus, and things start to get scrambled. And that remains to that similar extent all the way through the sixth round, where this scrambling kind of plateaus. And then from there, after the sixth round, things seem to be even more scrambled. Not hugely so, but at an increasing rate up until the late rounds, where you will find some players that were jumping up or down like 3 rounds, basically in and out of the tail end of the draft based on it being full PPR or not. Generally speaking, the heat maps via draft spot are incredibly similar. So this one compared to this one that we did for the half PPR scoring, there you go, which still has some full PPR scoring ADPs in here, so it's not all half PPR. This wasn't that video wasn't completely irrelevant if you paid attention to it for full PPR. Now, when we look at the individual positions and some of the changes that we're seeing from full PPR or from half PPR to full PPR, I think this totally makes sense. And so this kind of goes in the reverse too for half PPR, you can think of it. So first of all, for the tight end position, I saw that tight ends were going slightly earlier until they don't. So earlier on in the drafts, we were seeing tight ends go early, slightly earlier than the previous data information, the previous video that I made. And then the next tier, the same thing occurs. And then it's this third set here that they're actually pushed back to this final couple of rounds, whereas you see they're going via ADP here a little bit earlier compared to this data. You can see it's not so scrunched towards the end of the draft, a little bit more evenly keeled is how they were going towards the end of the draft. So you can kind of see that difference. That's what I mean by they got pushed back and squashed towards the back end of the draft there. So people were taking them a little bit earlier. 1 or 2 guys, 6 picks earlier is what I'm talking about throughout the first 2/3 of the draft. And then things kind of got pushed back. The importance, because, people spent more on it early, I suppose, makes sense. But also, interestingly, it's not that they all got pushed back. There's also some got pushed forward because more tight ends go in full PPR, at least according to this data set. You can expect more tight ends might go. 23 tight ends taken here compared to 21 in the previous data. And then when we look at the quarterback position, the increase in demand for tight ends seems to create a very similar opposite effect for the quarterback position. They got moved back ever so slightly. You can see in the end how they get drafted goes just a little bit more smoother, if I recall, less bunched up here. Both times pretty smooth overall, but actually, the beginning here starts we got the second round here, third round here. So just a little bit moved back. These effects are very slight. They aren't going to occur in every single draft. Remember how your league tends to draft the quarterback position. every league's a little bit different depending on just how the, what the makeup of those leagues are. And when we look at the wide receiver position, they actually go off the board more smoothly than they did previously. If you were to look at the differences, there's less variance, less ups and downs, hots and colds to this information here. And that also creates less of a dead area in the draft. Like, once again, they tend to just go more smoothly throughout. Rounds 8 through 11, they were very, very dead in this half PPR, whereas just a little less dead, a little more wide receivers taken overall. And there's actually 2 more wide receivers were taken in this data set than would have been taken in the previous data set that I showed you. The average taken per round also went up. It went from 4, so you'll see the white is kind of like the average. Middle number 5 here was 4 previously in this information. So once again, just showing you everything increasing just a little bit. And once again, we will see what happens with the wide receivers. Kind of similar to the tight ends and the quarterbacks, the opposite effect tends to happen at the running back position. So where the wide receivers tend to calm down and smooth out throughout the draft, the opposite effect happened to the running back position. The drafting of them got slightly more volatile, a little bit more predictable when all of a sudden there would be runs going on. The runs are heavier essentially on the running back position. So in this data set, you'll see the spikes are higher. Here in the 10th round, we see 6 running backs going, whereas here in the 11th round, we see 5 running backs going. In the full PPR data set, we see in the 14th round, a spike of 6 wide receivers going, whereas we had running backs, a little bit of a spike here, rounds 14 and 15, not as much of a spike, and you will also see that the cooldown is much quicker here to round 15, whereas things were a little bit more spread out, just more volatile once again with the full PPR running back drafting. And it also appears that 1 or 2 fewer running backs will probably end up getting taken throughout your draft. Rounds 7, 9, and 12 are going to be good times to strike before the hot spots or rushes occur at the running back position. So you can see here 7, 9, and 12 there will just get you a little bit. If you want to zig while the rest of the group is zagging, that is what you're going to be looking to do it in full PPR. That should get you a little bit ahead. You might feel like you're reaching a little bit, but if you got a guy that you really want and you're not so sure that they're going to be around, you can start to expect that they might get taken very soon in those rounds. So you just kind of get ahead of things. So there's the individual positional breakdowns. There's some differences in the DSTs and kickers that you could look. All of this information, once again, up on the website, just a different tab, but the same area where you could find it previously up on the website. So we saw an increase in the amount of wide receivers taken, receivers, both in tight ends and wide receivers, and the decrease came across the board from the quarterback position to the running backs to the DSTs and the kickers. All of them, we saw a little bit of a decrease to make up for the increase that we saw in the tight ends and the wide receivers. Then when looking at the overall heat maps via ADP, this one over here, the main thing that I can say that did not show up in the via draft spot heat map is probably not actionable, but things are going to be a little bit more set in stone, a little bit more predictable. And in essence, these numbers are a little less volatile overall than they were in this draft. And in like the half PPR numbers. And I'd also like to point out that this number is lower, 217 players compared to 227, which once again just means that there's a smaller expectation, a little bit more predictable about who's going to end up going off the board in these drafts. Is all that comes down to. Once again, how actionable is that? I don't really think that it is. Prepare for your draft as much as you can, and we all know that come draft day, there will be some curveballs thrown. Unexpected things will happen, so you can't really plan for what unexpected things will happen, but maybe a few less of them happen in full PPR. Last up here, coming back to this, so If you recall, I talked about drafting from a deficit to drafting from a surplus, like when you can start to reach within your drafts, when you are starting to essentially draft from a talent surplus, when things are going to be less predictable, when there is more talent than there are draft spots available now relative to the value. Whereas early on in drafts, you can't get enough value. There's not enough talent. Everybody's, people are going to be possibly a little bit disappointed with what they're seeing be available to them at certain points in the draft, just because we tend to like less than, for instance, 6 times 12, is that like 70 or something? 72. We like fewer than 72 players in the top 72 players. Once again, it's just drafting from a deficit surplus. Hopefully you saw the last video. Hopefully that made sense anyways if you didn't. And so what we see here, if I were to show you that same information, is that changeover actually occurs in the 11th round. So you're going to want to stick to the plan through rounds 10 and 11 probably. Don't start to reach too much. Don't grab your DST yet. You're still picking from a certain amount of value that is limited. You're not in a surplus yet. Whereas here you can see the surplus began in the 9th round for the half PPR. So, yeah, there's just more demand for less players. There's, I would say, probably due to just being more demand for wide receivers in general, that you're not drafting from the surplus until you hit this 11th round there. So don't be reaching before you get out of that 10th round. I suppose 11th round at the very earliest is when you start to think about a DST. Don't be popping off here in the 10th round yet. Jump cut. So I realized I didn't do a draft for this video. That was probably something that the person that requested this was thinking would be involved in the process. So I did do a zigzag. You can see here a draft with the new inputs from the full PPR information, thinking full PPR. And so here it is. I went from team 6 again. And in the first round, I came to a wide receiver / running back. Of course, it's going to depend exactly where you are in the first round, what's on the board, what you're comfortable with. But in general, especially for full PPR, I'd rather be taking a wide receiver in the first round than for the second pick, wide receiver, quarterback, tight end, kind of in that order. Now, you know me, I feel much better. I feel more comfortable waiting on quarterbacks and tight ends in general in drafts and rather not take the first ones off of the board. So I went wide receiver. Sam Laporta makes it there. I'm happy to think about doing that. Josh Allen, if you're really high on him, happy about thinking about doing that. I'd probably rather be closer towards the end of the second round if I'm going to go one of those routes. And then I had running back as the third pick no matter what. So that is what I did in Derrick Henry. And then Cooper Kupp, I was able to, I didn't have any kind of zigzag. It was kind of wide open there for my fourth pick. So I was debating between quarterback, wide receiver. I saw I had some areas where I could probably grab those a little bit later. Running back, since, I already had 2 wide receivers. But once again, we're in full PPR, and running backs fly off the board. I knew I'm taking a wide receiver in the next round. That was set in stone. But with Cooper Kupp there, this really came down to who was available, right? Cooper Kupp was there. I think that there's a very high potential upside, of course, for Cooper Kupp to possibly have a bounce back year. So you compare that to those running backs that were available, like Joe Mixon was basically the competition here. Cooper Kupp, Joe Mixon, I lean Cooper Kupp. So fill in my flex spot or my wide receiver spot, especially if it's a 3 wide receiver league. I like that all the more. Then you come around and we still were able to get a top end wide receiver again to either serve as our primary backup, really help us fly through those bye weeks, or now maybe that's my flex spot if it's a 3 wide receiver league. So I love that wide receiver room there. Then we come around and it was a quarterback / wide receiver. Well, I've got my 4 wide receivers already. So I thought, yeah, let's just go quarterback here since we're going, kind of against the grain. So we were able to get Joe Burrow there. And then Brock Bowers, it was tight end / running back. So here I ended up going tight end. This was more experimental than not. I would probably rather wait, but it depends what your viewpoint of Brock Bowers is, right? But for me, Zamir White, I think, is a very strong RB2, so I prefer going running back there and then making Mostert, Singletary kind of fight as or just be my team's backup running backs instead of kind of having this battle between Mostert, Singletary, and Gus Edwards, where I don't really know who's my RB2 out of that group. It could be any one of them. Honestly, week 1, it might just be Gus Edwards here, depending on how things shake out with that backfield. So, yeah, tight end, running back. I already had my tight end, so I went running back, Mostert. Then the next round there, I had a free round. I could have gone any position. I wasn't about to grab my second quarterback or tight end. And, of course, Mostert being my second running back, it could end up being a very good second running back, just like last year. But who knows if that'll repeat itself. There's a lot of competition in that backfield. So Singletary, we get ourselves another starting running back. That's what I like about this. Then we get Gus Edwards, another guy who's expected to be the starting running back. So as you can see, I mean, there are running backs that you can get later on in the draft. It's up to the 11th round here in full PPR, where now I'm starting to question the running backs. But I mean, Brian Robinson, I'd feel fine with. Zeke Elliott's probably a starting running back for a team. Chase Brown, I think, could become the starter throughout the season. I think he'll be a fine contributor, even if he doesn't, because I think he'll get a good amount of passing work, which is quite valuable for running backs. I kind of pointed out, if I was doing this for myself, I would definitely start that running back a little bit earlier. I might go Evan Ingram there instead of Joe Burrow, and then go running back would probably be the more likely scenario if I were to fine-tune this a little bit more. But it also, always, even in this scenario, when I'm trying to zig and zag, I'm looking at what's available, follow the board. But there you go. Thank you very much. Back to the video. I think there's still a little bit more video left. And that's it for now. Look forward to, we're going to start looking at drafting specific scenarios for the rest of the off season. So drafting from an early position, and then I'll be looking at hopefully doing like a 2 quarterback league video, those types of things. So if you have a specific set of rules, number of players, scoring format, you got 3 flex spots that you got to fill up, 1 wide receiver, 1 tight end, 1 running back, or something crazy, put those down in the comments and I will try to get to them. Other than that, peace out. Have a good one. Enjoy I believe this will come out on Monday. And look forward, later this week, I will have a video. I think we'll do Anthony Richardson first for player highlights, and then Dalton Kincaid on deck. On deck, yeah. Peace out.